When you're in a divorce, or even this is something that comes up over and over after the divorce too, right, is just that it's hard because your kids come back and they say things, and do you address it? Should you feel concerned about it? Do you ignore it? Do you what do you do? The younger they are, the harder it is. I think this is the hardest between like ages probably 5 and 10.
Yeah.
Because I think around 5, when they start going to school, that's when they start figuring out that they can manipulate you. All of our children are human beings, and they naturally are going to do the thing that they believe in their mind will benefit them.
Right.
That's just how our subconscious works.
Right.
And so they don't realize that it's saying or doing certain things that they're creating chaos between the homes.
No, but they can inadvertently create a problem.
Right.
A lot of times you have to take what they're saying seriously,
right,
but a lot of times you don't.
Right. And that's, again, this is one of those gray areas that's really hard to figure out. And, I think if you have communication with the co-parent, with the other co-parent, that is one of the things that helps this the most. But I realize that's not possible for everyone. I think that it did help me and you a lot, because your ex-wife and I a lot of times will compare notes and say, hey, they're saying this or that.
Right.
And try to figure out like what's going on. It's usually something very simple for the child like that, or that they just don't want to go through the upheaval of a transition. But we start making things out in our mind to be, that there's problems.
Right. And that can be tough when you are a sensitive parent and you get the sense that the child is unhappy or reluctant to go, or the other parent says things that hurt the child's feelings, or maybe there's a bruise. I mean, a lot of times there's kids come back and there's a bruise on his arm or something, and sometimes, especially little boys, they get hurt.
Yes. They fall, they tumble, my younger son, he has split his head open. He's broken his collarbone twice. Mm-hmm. He broke his arm when he was 3.
And that was all because of your abuse.
I'm sure. It's probably what he would say.
That's right. If you hadn't hit him in the collarbone, he wouldn't have broke his collarbone. What some parents do is they jump. I'm going to get my lawyer on the phone.
Right.
I'm going to file a request for order, and I'm going to get custody. And really, that kind of thing a lot of times does more harm for the child than good.
Right.
Because you're jumping to conclusions about what's going on in the other world based on the testimony of a 5-year-old.
Right.
So let's think about that for a second.
Yeah, that 5-year-old suddenly has a lot of power.
Right. So when you give a child power like that, what happens is because the children are very smart.
Yes.
And you're giving that child the power to manipulate you.
Absolutely. You have to do one of two things. You either have to talk to the other parent about it if you're in a situation where you can do that at all without it erupting into conflict, because many times the child's interpretation of what's going on is not accurate. Or number 2, if you really do think that there's some accuracy to what the child is saying, you have to get the child in therapy.
Oh, I agree with that.
You have to, because otherwise what happens is you go into court and all you have is the testimony of this 5 to 10-year-old child, and that's not enough, because the child doesn't get to make the decision about who their parent is or how much time they see the parent or whatever any more than they would if you were married. If you're married, the child can't go, well, I've decided I don't want to live here with you. I'm going to go live somewhere else. Yeah. You would be like, no, that's not how this works.
Right.
And it's not how it works after divorce either. You still have 2 parents, unless somebody has been, stripped of that title, but generally they have not most of the time. And so you still have two parents that have those parental rights, and the child doesn't get to choose that. And the best way to get a child's voice heard is through therapy.
I hear this from the court all the time. Be the parent. Be the parent. That means that I don't want to go to mom's. Get in the car going to mom's.
Right. That transition is emotional upheaval. Just the fact that I'm going somewhere different. It's kind of like if we go to a hotel. What happens when we go to a hotel? It's kind of like, it's a nice, clean, minimal environment. It's out of our normal environment. Maybe we relax. Maybe we feel good. Then you've got to transition back home. We all know that feeling of coming off vacation, and you're. Yeah. It's kind of like that. If you can relate to that, it's not that you don't like being home.
It's a jolt.
And it's not that you didn't enjoy being in the hotel. There are different aspects about both of those things, but they're different, and it's a different mental transition between those. Right. And that's kind of what it's like going back and forth between two houses. And so really you want the transitions to be, you want to have as few as possible in relation to what's appropriate for the age of the child. If the child's old enough, like we did with your kids, 6, 7, 8, you start talking about privacy issues, and you talk about what's private in each home. I think if they're really, really little, like 3, 4, and we don't really know if they're getting concepts or not, and you don't want them to feel like they can't talk about the other parent, then I usually just have them redirect. So you just say, if they say, well, Daddy was yelling at me all weekend, let's just take that for an example. Then you might say something like, oh, wow, I'm sorry. It sounds like you had a tough weekend. What do you want to do this week?
Yeah.
Or are we going to plan to, redirect them? Because you know what? A 4-year-old that's saying, Daddy yelled at me all weekend. Okay, 1, probably not accurate. Dad probably wasn't yelling the entire weekend. Number 2, maybe Dad was not feeling well. Maybe Dad was sick. Maybe Dad worked an extra shift. Maybe, the child was being exceptionally difficult. Maybe, who knows the context within which that is coming. A lot of people think, well, I don't pump my kids for information. The kids give me the kids just randomly give me the information. That's true. Kids will often come up with a random nugget. But what we tend to do as adults is start to try to peel back those layers. Right. And it takes a lot of emotional restraint to go, I'm not going to go there. I could, but I'm going to choose not to.
Right. So in a way, you're protecting their privacy.
Correct. Because they don't know to protect their own.
No, I mean, you're protecting the other parent's privacy by redirecting the child.
Right, because the child hasn't reached a stage to where they understand that needs to be done. If there are things going on that are not rising to the level of abuse, but are just concerning as a parent, I find that most of the time what will happen is that will work itself out. Over the long haul, that will work itself out. Your children will reach a point to where they'll just refuse to go, or they'll get old enough to have a voice. We start seeing 13, 14, they start having more of a voice in what they want to do. I mean, I think by 16, 17, it's pretty much impossible for the court to make them see a parent they don't want to see.
Right. Or ideally, they resolve their issue.
Right.
Right. The issue gets resolved by whatever method that the other parent uses to resolve conflict. Give your kids the gift of supporting the other parent.
Yeah.
Give them that gift. It's by far and away the best alternative to simply staying together and not having conflict.
Right.
And that for many people is impossible. I understand that.
Right.
But option 2 is, son, don't talk about your mother that way.
Right.
You're not to speak about your mother that way, and support them with the children, and don't ask them what's going on over there. And if they say things, like you said, redirect.
Right.
Head that off. Change the subject.